Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Robert Phoenix coming at you live from South Central Texas, also known as the Hill Country, here on Friday the 25th, and welcome to the Friday FARcast. We've got people starting to fill up the chat space, kind of wait around. It's not going to be a real long show today. I've got a bunch of stuff I have to deal with the election here. So, but I do have a commitment to you on Friday to get into things. And starting next week, we'll be back more into a regular schedule as the election winds down. And I kind of reintegrate from about 2 or 3 weeks of very intense activity travel. You can focus more time on the production and getting more people in for interviews, which I really like to do on Fridays. But just haven't had a whole lot of time. By the way, I really want to recommend an interview that Henrik Palmgren did with E. Michael Jones. It's a fantastic interview. And Michael always blows me away. He always blows me away. That guy is so freaking smart. And he really broke down the Greta Thunberg. I like how Henrik says her name, Greta Thunberg. He really breaks down the Greta thing in a pretty interesting way, which I'm going to try to summarize for you so that you can get the gist of it. But you really need to go watch the entire interview to get the big picture. Okay. But I will try to summarize it and break it down a little bit. Who do we have in chat? We got Christine, we got Jennifer, we got FUP77. Here's our fifth wall girl. What's going on? Tamara, hi Tamara. Jasper is hanging. It's cold here. Yes, I do have a new headset, Christine. I do. It's got a cardioid mic, and hopefully you can be picking me up a little bit better. I broke down my mic and setup for when I went to Kerrville. I haven't really set it back up yet, but I will. So for now, we got this bad boy. It's cold here. Man, it was like 40 degrees this morning. So Jasper and Rosie are hanging out on the bed right now. They're in snuggle mode on the bed. And of course, probably better for them. They're probably digging it more than being up here. You never know with Jasper. He may hear the call. And if he does, I'll play the song. Let's see who else is over in the chat room. We got Ian. Hey, Ian, what's happening? Hey, there's Steve, the Viking. Steve Mercer looks like he just dropped off of the set of the latest Thor movie, by the way. And a great guy. Totally great guy, just totally present, and I wish I could have spent more time with you, Steve, during our hang in the Hill Country. But glad you made it, and glad you're part of the chat room and part of the experience as well. What else we have here? We got Tamara. Great to see you get a day, baby, uninterrupted watching. They love the warm spot you leave behind. Man, my cats are such a trip. I love my cats. I have fallen in love with my cats. They're totally cool. And I love animals. I've always been an animal lover. And dogs, I've always loved dogs. They've played a big role in my life. And at some point when I feel like I'm settled in to a place, I wouldn't mind getting another dog. Because I really like their companionship. I like to go get them in, my car, my truck, and go on walks. And they're totally great for that. And I kind of miss that. With a dog, but not now. I've been kind of moving about, and I live in an apartment. And, it's not the best place for a dog. I have told the story about Leo the Catahoula that I got. That's a very funny story. It was a way for me to get my kid a dog, and somebody was giving away a Catahoula. I had no idea what a Catahoula was until I went to go get this dog, and it was the biggest fucking dog. It was enormous, this dog. It was like huge. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this dog. He's huge. And just a funny story. So my kid was about 4 years old at the time, and 4 or 5, about 5, I think. And I decided to get a dog. And it's like, okay, you know, newly divorced, and you know, get a dog, and it'll be fun. And so I responded to this ad in Craigslist where they were giving away this dog, and it was this Catahoula. So I started to look up Catahoulas. I was like, well, you know, I've been around big dogs. I've been around active dogs. I could probably handle this dog. And I met this guy at this shopping center in Vallejo. And he shows up, nice guy, shows up with his kid, some other dude, and this dog. And it's me and my son. And he takes his dog out, and the dog is freaking enormous. Then I had a Range Rover at the time, and it took up the entire back seat of the freaking Range Rover. It was huge. So I asked the boy, who at that time was a little bit older than my son, maybe 9 or 10. And I asked him, so are you, dog's name was Leo. Are you going to miss Leo? He says, no. I'm like, okay. So I get this dog, and they take off. I get a bag of food, and they take off. And this dog is pulling me all over the place. I mean, I think in the right situation would have been a good dog. So I get him in the back seat of my car. It's a Range Rover, and he's as big as the back seat. I'm like, this is not going to work. So I go to start my car, start my Range Rover. It's not starting. It's really not starting. So I call the guy up and I said, hey, my car's not starting. I can't get the dog back. You've got to come get the dog. It's a true story. So he comes back and he takes the dog. So I had a Catahoula for about maybe 10 minutes of my life. I guess I had that dog for 10 minutes. You ever have a dog for 10 minutes? I did. It was an interesting experience. Anyway, need tons of experience to deal with a Catahoula leopard dog. Shit, I know, right? But I will say, after just I did take the dog for a walk, and I'm good at walking dogs, and so he started to respond to me pretty quickly because I understand the lead and the leash and all that stuff, and it was good. But it was just one of those acts of God where the car wouldn't start, and the dude would take him back. Anyway, it's been Cat City ever since. Laura's Catahoula definitely had a mind of its own, but a beautiful, sweet dog. Hey, Miranda, nice to see you. There is Natasha from Gig Harbor. Oh, what did I say? What did I tell you? Here he is. Here he is. He's back. Got to play the theme song. Well, come on, let's go. Get over here. I've made room for you. No, don't press that. No, it's not. This is not a place for you to be right here. Come on, I've made room for you. Okay, so I've changed the setup here a little bit on the desk. Okay, say hi to your adoring fans. Give them your butt. So we have to play the theme song. Give me a second. Got to find your theme song. Yep. And the 1 and the 2 and the 3. Here we go. God, I've got all these windows open. A lot of windows open. The most important window right now is this one right here. Every time it makes an appearance, got to play it. Almost there.
Jasper, the astrological cat. Look up your chart, show you right where you're at. It's Jasper, the astrological cat.
The only cat on the internet with his own astrological song. The one, the only Jasper. Okay, so I think we're pretty much assembled, right? Right, Jasper? Are we assembled? I think so. Like I said, it's going to be kind of a hit and run show today. Try to go for about 60 minutes, and just talk about some things that are happening. So on the kind of the dark doom side of things, been picking up a lot of chatter about today and this weekend, where things are supposedly about to go sideways in a big sort of global way. I mean, there's that noise that percolates on the internet. So Ole Damagaard, if you have not seen his latest video, Ole Damagaard is really interesting. He travels around the world, and I want to know how he gets his money. Curious. But he goes to places where he is able to theoretically scuttle false flag events. He's been doing it for about 30 years. According to him, there have been 18 that have been thwarted due to his work, his research, his presence, and notifying other people. I wouldn't doubt that. One of the things that he's noted for is looking at previous false flags and seeing where the clues are being shown for the next ones that are already hidden in plain sight in place. So he talks about, in his latest video, something happening in Europe, something big, something that has a 9/11 kind of connotation, or 9/11 kind of impact on Europe. So there's that in the background, and there's some other kind of scripts and programs that are running that are sort of pointing to this chatter around today, tomorrow, and Sunday being event oriented. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but I am talking about it because it's kind of out there, right? It's sort of, again, circulating, and we are coming into that time where we're going to be dealing with that Mars-Pluto square. Remember that. We're talking about this Mars-Pluto square now for about a week, maybe 2 weeks before I left for the East Coast, and prior to my last Sunday night show, which was I think the week before the event in the Hill Country here. That Mars-Pluto square is something I've had my eye on. It's intense. It's very dark and potentially very violent. Just the aspect alone. Okay, you look up Mars-Pluto square in any decent astrological treatise, book, bullet point around that aspect, and you'll get exactly what I'm talking about. And because Mars is in the sign of Libra, which is, I believe, is a detriment, and then it's where the energy of Mars is being expressed through Venus, which is about harmony and diplomacy and synergy, and Mars does not operate or play well within that construct. And again, I've talked about Mars and Libra, where if you've got a cause or you've got an opportunity to work with somebody in your life, to work together, to be together, do work together, Mars and Libra can be great. Outside of that, it can be very argumentative. Might be good for personal training. Working with people in a physical Mars kind of way. Hadn't really thought about that, but if you have Mars and Libra in your chart and you're a physical trainer, congratulations, you're working your chart. So, and again, Pluto in Capricorn, which is this Capricornian, oligarchic, hierarchical kind of transformation of state that we're in right now. And it's fascinating time that we're living in, and Mars is taking a hard angle against Pluto. Let me go back to the Henrik E. Michael Jones interview, where E. Michael Jones breaks down Greta Thunberg and what she's all about. Now, I have not read her mother's book, but her mother, who is seems to be a completely egomaniacal individual, bent on fame and fortune. Her mother wrote a book, and in this book, she talks about Greta, and you get to see kind of the makeup of Greta and events in Greta's life that begin to turned Greta into the person that she is. Now, one of the things that Michael does a really good job of talking about is how Sweden became this experiment. It became this place where they were going to have a social experiment. And one of the things that Sweden did was the state, kind of the state religion, or the religion that was most closely related to and associated with the Swedish people, was Lutheranism. And I think sometime in the 60s, the late 60s, Sweden did something with Lutheranism. It was like they disassociated the crown and disassociated with Lutheranism. So what happened was that they made a decision that they were going to move from this kind of Lutheranism into this more state-sponsored social justice, humanitarian kind of religion that was using feminism and this reassociation or the reattachment to the goddess, with that as being kind of the foundational point for the new Sweden. And this is what E. Michael Jones talks about. And during that time, Sweden went through this phase where they were building lots of places, but they all looked the same. You know, they wanted this kind of uniformity that was part of the architecture there. And then even in terms of like dress, they were trying to institute through the media and through education in schools, kind of a very unisexual vibe, you know, where there was this blending between the masculine and the feminine. So Sweden, during this period of the 60s and the 70s, works on this new organizing principle. As they kicked Lutheranism to the curb, they're working on this new organizing principle, which is based on social justice and feminism, and creating this sort of very equal, very level playing field where men and women are not that different from one another. They're not that different. So what happens during this time is that Greta Thunberg's mother becomes a pretty well-known opera singer. You know, she won the Eurovision song contest, so that's kind of a big deal. You know, it's like being crowned the diva of Europe. And so she became more popular and more famous. She was homeless. So Greta was raised in an environment where there was no mother. Like the mother had abandoned the home because she was off running around the world being a big fucking deal. So Greta has a breakdown around this. According to the book, this is in the book. She has this breakdown and she stages a hunger strike. So she will not eat until her mother comes home. So what happened? So the mother is essentially forced to come back into the home and begin to take care of Greta and put her career kind of on the side. Now, what's interesting is that the father, who was a stay-at-home dad, and because in Sweden now they had achieved some level of role reversal. So it's the mother that's going out into the world and the father who is now staying at home because that's kind of what they wanted. And yet, and he wanted to cook, Greta would not eat his food. She was not happy with her father at home. She wanted her mother. So her mother comes back home, and then now Greta has held her mother hostage. And there is, in this story or in this narrative, a very extreme kind of intention, right? It's either come home and cook the food, or I will starve myself and die. Does that sound familiar? It's the same kind of ideology, or the same kind of extreme acting out that she has placed upon the world, and this idea that we've got 12 years left, and if we don't change radically within 12 years, the planet is going to die. So she held her mother hostage in order to get her back into the home. And she's doing the same thing. She's holding the rest of the world hostage to get the rest of the world to come back. And then Greta has this weird diet. Apparently she would only eat gnocchi. She would only eat gnocchi. That was it. And she would only eat 5 gnocchi. Not 6, not 4, 5. 5 gnocchi. So her mother was forced to come back so she could prepare her 5 gnocchi a meal. And apparently Greta eats very slowly. So 5 gnocchi would be a 5-course meal for the rest of us. That's where her OCD kicks in. And so the OCD also kicks in on the climate change thing. And she saw some kind of film in school. It was the island with the plastic on it, the plastic island in the ocean. And that was the thing that galvanized her. And apparently Michael made reference to this other film that they show in school in Sweden, which is a film about sexual education and sex intimacy. And that Greta probably saw this around 12 or 13. And we would basically say that this would be a soft-core porn film that are shown to the young people of Sweden. And it's been shown for a long time, this film, apparently. And it is kind of famous in Sweden. And the film, not so ironically, features a Caucasian woman and a so-called black male. And they do this soft porn thing, and so it's to show kids what sex is all about in lovely left-leaning liberal Sweden. So also, apparently, according to E. Michael Jones, because this is mentioned in the book, that Greta sees this in school and it flips her out. Totally flips her out. And it flips her out because there's this connection with her mother who is not there. And she's basically watching her mother, or a woman who, in her mind, in her autistic mind, in her spectrum mind, she's associating this woman with her mother. And it becomes, again, part of this very traumatic story. And then there's the plastic island. And now she's become obsessed with control. And the one thing she can't control is she can't control her mother, because her mother's gone all the time. So part of what has hatched Greta Thunberg was hatched in the absence of a mother in the home. Really interesting. So E. Michael Jones makes note of this. And because Greta was able to hold her mother hostage by going on a hunger strike and saying that, that it was important for, that she needed to get back, now she's holding the rest of us hostage. That it's kind of this learned behavior. And then Henrik chimed in with the fact that the boat that she sailed in on, the yacht, was once owned by the Rothschilds. And then it was sold to somebody else in Sweden who's a billionaire. So they're ruling in on the yacht of a billionaire. And so there's this kind of Rothschild connection with the whole thing. It's a really interesting interview. And one of the things that E. Michael Jones touches in on is, the end game to the climate change theater. And the end game is always depopulation, and it's the lack of development. So if you look, and he made a note of this, he was in East Africa last year. And I think he might have been in Tanzania, if I'm not mistaken. So he was there, and he was looking around, and one of the things that struck him was the absolute lack of development there. Like, there's no development happening. Now, the Russians apparently have just entered into some deals where they want to go in now and they want to be able to help Africa. But how much development is actually taking place? I would assume that some development is taking place in areas where they have the precious, rare earth minerals, the rare earth metals. Like, what is it, cadmium? So that's happening. But in terms of development for the countries inside of the continent and the people, that is not happening. That's not happening. So what they are planning on doing and want to do is they want to essentially bring as many people out of Africa and relocate them and turn Africa into this kind of pristine veldt so that it can be re-inhabited, probably by the people that are engineering everything at a planetary level. So it's like, let's move them out, let's move them into these places, let's create havoc in these countries, and then let's repopulate Africa, and we'll make it our domain, because it's got all these freaking resources, and we're not developing it because we're not developing it for a reason. We'll develop it when we get there. We're not going to develop for these people. We don't want to develop for these people. We've already got development for these people. Let's get them to those places. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. So they're emptying out Africa. Imagine that. And there's a way that they do it as well. I mean, they create all kinds of diseases. They've got Ebola. They've got rampant AIDS. Of course, there are always wars that are popping up in Africa, tribal wars. There are chieftains, and there are strongmen that are employed by the West and the NGOs, and they go in and wreak havoc, and a lot of death takes place. When a lot of death takes place, the environment is savaged, it's ruined. Oh, now we got to move people out, right? Do you see what's happening? This is what's happening in Africa. So E. Michael Jones talked about that. So the end game with climate change is, number one, depopulation. That's at the top. And number two, sort of the end of development in the West. That's the other thing, because climate change and working on this whole climate change deal says you got to stop doing things. You've got to stop building. You've got to stop manufacturing. You've got to stop driving your cars. But basically, you've got to go back 150 years in some ways. In other ways, of course, they'll have plenty of technology to track where you. That's not really development, though. 5G and the surveillance systems, that's not really development. This stuff's already in place. So they'll have some kind of technological development. Of course they will. But the development that comes to communities and building and structure and all that stuff, they're shutting that down. They're shutting that down. That circus is leaving. And they can do it in China for a while, but they're not doing it in Africa. And Michael was pretty clear about it. Anyway, go find the interview. It's a really good interview. Henrik is at his best here in really looking at Greta. He did another breakdown of Greta and the people behind Greta. These people, they're ultimately filthy rich corporatists. They run hedge funds and they're bankers, and they stand to make a hell of a lot of money in the climate change scheme. And they're pushing Greta out there so that she can promote and market it. It's just so cynical. It's so completely cynical. But people are waking up. And this is one of the things that E. Michael Jones and Henrik were talking about. So this Extinction Rebellion group, they are. I pointed them out on my show on Friday. They're the ones that are starting to pop up now. Again, probably Soros, Rothschild funded, and they're just completely bananas. They're totally bananas. There's a video of them in England, and they're in a working class part just outside of London, and people are trying to get on their subways to get into London and go to work. And Michael brought this up, and I think it's actually just so clear, it's genius, that the subway has been there to cut down carbon emissions. These are not people driving their cars to work. They're not. They're taking the subway. And yet these boneheads got on top of the subway and decided that they were going to keep the subway from going into London. I mean, what do these people expect? To take horses and buggies into London? I mean, they're protesting the very thing that they are theoretically in favor of. I mean, that just shows you how out of touch nuts these people are. Anyway, the people who were there to get on their train, and remember, this is a working class neighborhood of just outside of London. They were not taking this. They were pissed. They pulled these people off the top of their train, and they pulled them down, and they kicked their ass. That's what they did. They beat them up. You think they're ever going to go back on top of that train, that subway, and protest? They're going to think twice about that. Another version of this was happening in Washington, D.C., I think, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of these Extinction Rebellion protests that happened about a week ago. It was on a Friday. And you had these idiots. Unfortunately, they were mostly women. I'm not saying women are idiots, but they were, again, kind of the front line, the feel-good front line. I think there might have been one guy there. And they're hand in hand, and they've got a banner, and they're singing some kind of lame-ass protest song. Just lame. And this guy in a backpack comes walking up to them and rips their banner out of their hands. And he tosses it on a tree that's next to the Extinction Rebellion protest. And he's screaming at this group, again, mostly women. I think it was one guy. And he's screaming at them, people have to go to work. They have to go to work. Now, on the one hand, I'll just say this. I think the Extinction Rebellion people might have the right idea. They might have the right idea, but they have the wrong cause. Like not going to work, not going to school, not buying shit for an extended period of time would have a major impact on the economy and on the system. And that would, to me, would be the most worthwhile tool to protest anything that we wanted to have changed. You just say, no, I'm done. And you get, what is it, like 34% of the population? There's a certain number, and you get them to do that and to opt out for a month. It's a game changer, total game changer. But that's voluntary. That's voluntary. That's saying, I'm not going to do this, or we're not going to do this. We don't consent, versus getting out in front of people and keeping them from getting to where they need to be without their consent. It's very different, right? But people they're waking up, and they're having less patience now, less patience with these tactics and these stunts that are there to supposedly draw attention to these events. So it's really a good thing, to be honest with you, that people have less patience around what's going on. It's about time. It's about time that it's happened, because it's taken us so long to get to this place. But we're here. We're here. We're waking up. We're aware, and there are plenty of things to do. So I wanted to revisit the situation with the Younger case, with James/Luna Younger. And one of the things that can be done to a situation like that, right? So one of the things was, it came up in the chat that taking a swift and violent action would get people to rethink what they're doing. I can't argue with that, right? Because that's what happens. You do something intense, people think twice about doing what they're going to do, right? I can't argue with that premise. However, that said, where we are at this point in our culture, in this point in our history, you do that and you wind up going to jail for 10 years like the Proud Boys, versus 18 months for the Antifa guys. Just remember that. The Proud Boys took something into their own hands in an area that would not support it, and they got 10 years in prison for standing up against Antifa. The Antifa guys got 18 months. I'm just laying it out there, okay? There are other things that can be done. The first thing that can be done, first of all, if you're in that area, first of all, and I said this 2 days ago, if you're a Christian and you really value what's going on with this guy and his kids, you should probably throw a lot of money at the father so that he can fight this evil stench for as long as he can and recoup some of his attorney's fees for right now. Right, that would be the first thing. You want to load that father up with as much capital to fight this as possible, even if it's through the system. And by the way, the system does work at times. And you have to be able to get to a certain point in order to get there, but it does work. Case in point, Laura Presley, who was a council person in Austin, lost her seat to a guy that they brought in. He's an SJW. He's right out of the Ocasio-Cortez camp and campaign, and the voting machines were rigged, and Laura knew this, and so Laura took this guy to court, and he took the city of Austin to court, and at the first level she lost, and then she was hit with big fees and fines, so she appealed it, and guess what? She lost again. And hit with more fees and more fines. So her only recourse was the Texas State Supreme Court. And guess what? She went there and she won. She won. The court ruled that, yes, there indeed had been voter irregularities, but it had been too late. The election is over. Now, the one thing that she did was she was able to create a path. And the path was shown, and what was shown was the election was dirty. She was also able to have these fines that were levied on her. The courts levied her with fines after she lost. And that's to keep other people from doing what she did. She had those removed. Now, she still had her legal fees. She's still paying those off. So I'm just saying that there are times when the system does work. And if this guy could get to the Texas State Supreme Court, there may be a chance that it would be not just for him, but for other parents. You know, they're not going to be the only people that will face this test. And if a case can be made at the state level and even at the level of the Supreme Court, we have far-reaching circumstances so that we can put a stop to parents who have some kind of idea or goal in mind about changing their children's sexual identity without really the basis or the foundation for doing that, which I don't think even exists to begin with. That's just me. And for all intents and purposes, she's doing this because this is where her pediatric model is headed. She's using her child as, in many ways, a marketing ploy, because she's working, I think, closely with this Genesis Center, which is in Dallas, which is connected to the WPATH group, which is this global group which sets the standards for transition and has people all over the world working in that field so that they can be these transition advocates, even if your kid is 5, 6, 7 years old, okay? So where we are now is it's the Wild West, and you can do whatever, pretty much whatever you want. And if you're the custodial parent in the state of Texas, you can make those rules. You can treat your kid accordingly. If you say, I think my son should be a girl, guess what? The court just agreed with you. So the one thing that people could do could throw money at the father, and the father needs to be able to fight this thing. Not just for him, but for other families. That's one thing. The other thing that you could do is that area, there are businesses in that area, right? And this is unfortunate, but it's true that people would boycott that area. You wouldn't spend money there. You wouldn't spend money with the businesses there. This wouldn't happen because that's where the jury pool was drawn from. And you would hit that area with some kind of economic retribution. This is what the United States does, right? Sanctions. It's a way of like putting sanctions on a particular area. So we're not going to go there. This district, you know, if you've got hotels there that book conferences, you don't book your conference there, right? You may have some crazy left shit or some crazy, TrannyCon conference that might be there. Maybe they'll go there in support. You know, the Chick-fil-A versus the Popeyes war, that kind of a thing. You just divest, because it's clear that the people in that area, in their esteemed judgment and wisdom, did something that is far-reaching and takes the role of parenting right out of being a parent. It hands it right over to the state. So it's another thing that can be done, and it's not violence. It is not violent. And it can be applied to kind of any situation. So I just wanted to respond to that. And there are ways in which people can, make a difference and make an impact, and not a shot has to be fired. And in fact, Sun Tzu talks about this to a great extent, about going to war without going to war. Sun Tzu never wanted to go to war. He never wanted to experience the loss of troops, and he never wanted to experience using money and capital on long-standing wars. If he could fight a war and win a war without shedding one drop of blood, that's how he did it. So anyway, I just wanted to respond to that, because that was brought up in the chat room. There are other ways. And I get it. If something violent happened, you probably get people's attention really, really quickly. But where we are societally and culturally, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And again, I referenced what happened to the Proud Boys. They got in, they intervened. They were in a scrum with Antifa. These two dudes got 10 years. They're in prison for 10 years now. Meanwhile, the Antifa thugs got 18 months, and they'll be out probably less than that, maybe 9 to 10. So there you go. Just another kind of option. Okay, so big news story yesterday. Katie Hill. I love this, man. This is a very, very funny story. Unfortunately, it really, it's like, what I'm talking about. She's the congresswoman from Southern California. Santa Clarita is her district, and Santa Clarita is now infamous for the show The Santa Clarita Diet, which has to do with cannibalism. Drew Barrymore plays a mother who must feast on the living flesh and organs of people in order to stay alive and be a part of the family, be a mom. So the family helps and supports her. They're kind of her hunting team in a lot of ways. And of course, the people who she eats, they're bad people. So there's justifiable cause. But if you think about it, right? If you ate the organs of bad people, wouldn't you in turn become a bad person? Wouldn't you take on their characteristics? Wouldn't that be counterintuitive? I think it would be, because the organs have memory, cellular memory. So by the end of the series, or somewhere in the middle of the series, Drew Barrymore's character would be a Frankenstein monster, because she's eating all the organs of all these bad and despicable people that become justifiable on the show. And so somewhere halfway in the show, Drew Barrymore herself would become a bad and despicable person, and not just some poor creature who has to, exist on the flesh and the organs of the living, albeit bad people. It's kind of like that show Dexter. A lot of people love Dexter. Oh, isn't Dexter cool? Dexter's great. He's a sociopath. But guess what? He kills bad people. He's a sociopath that kills bad people. Wow. So he's a good sociopath. So Dexter was all about legitimizing sociopathology. He's a serial killer, but he's a good serial killer because he kills the bad people. He's an avenging angel of God. So I always thought that Dexter, which I never watched. I think I watched a little bit of it, but nothing I wanted to invest my consciousness with. And that's what they were promoting. They were promoting sociopathology. Like, we went from the anti-hero. Now, the anti-hero was somebody who, flouted with rules and convention. Dirty Harry is the best example of the anti-hero because he is outside the bounds of the law, but he knows right and wrong. And he knows good and evil. And the law and the system have gotten in the way of either interpreting that or defending it. So he's willing to do whatever it takes. Hence the name Dirty Harry. He's the prototypical anti-hero. You get to Dexter, it's not even the anti-hero. It's the criminal or the villain as the hero. Just like turning the Joker into the hero in the latest Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix. So that's where we are now. Everything's been inverted. And so the hero has become the villain. And the villain shows us the moral authority of being able to destroy or kill in the name of something greater or good. That's where it's gone to. A film that really championed this was the Watchmen movie. If you watch the Watchmen movie, that's the theme of the movie. The theme of the movie is that there's a despicable character who is, for all intents and purposes, the Antichrist. But because he knows that what he's going to do will destroy the planet, that it's in the planet's best interest. Because he can see 20 moves ahead of everybody else. And that's pretty much what happens. So this is kind of where we are now. How did we get here? Well, we got here with Silence of the Lambs. Well, why is that? Well, if you follow what happens with Silence of the Lambs, it does something. There are three movies that break one of the supreme and cardinal laws of movie making. And in movie making, you must kill the monster at the end of the movie. That was always a big part of the movies. There's another movie where that doesn't happen. I think one of the first movies that I saw where the monster isn't killed at the end was the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's a terrifying movie. And it's terrifying because the body snatchers are still living at the end of the movie. In most movies, you go in, you meet the monster, you go into the 12th house, you meet the monster, you're scared shitless. Through some heroic act or some version of self-sacrifice, the monster dies. And you can walk back out of the theater, right, with this encounter with the shadow and take it on and have it live through you. But at the end, it's dead. It's dead. And so you could face your fears inside of the movie theater, have them addressed, and then have them resolved. So to that extent, the movies played a very therapeutic role. They were a ritual. That changes with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the first version, because the Kevin McCarthy character is crazed at the end. He has stayed up all this time because if you fall asleep, the body snatchers will kill you. They'll take your life, right? They'll soul snatch you. And at the end, he thinks he's done. He hitchhikes on this truck, and he lifts up the back of the truck, and he sees the truck is full of these pods that are being driven to be distributed to all these other places. And he goes nuts at the end of the movie. Interestingly enough, the director of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is Don Siegel, who is the director of Dirty Harry. Right? Interesting. So when I saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it scared me shitless. They didn't put the monster back in the box. I looked under my bed for weeks after that looking for a damn pod because I didn't want to lose my body, my identity. So the other films where that happens, there's a movie called Harper, and I really want to do a breakdown of Harper. And it's a movie with Paul Newman. And there's a lot of very interesting symbolism and occult referencing in Harper. It's a very interesting movie. It's not just kind of an LA Philip Marlowe gumshoe kind of film. There's something else going on with Harper. At the end of Harper, something happens that had not happened in any movie prior to Harper. And I'll just give you the spoiler. It has to do with money. And it has to do with people getting away with a crime and getting away with money. And because of the way the movie was set up and the characters in the movie, like Lauren Bacall's in the movie, and she plays who would be the widow of this guy that Harper, aka Paul Newman, is looking for. He's gone missing. There's a kidnap, there's a ransom, all this stuff. She's such a despicable woman who's so filthy rich that the way this thing was set up was that at the end of the movie, there was a murder that took place. There was all kinds of strange collusion. And Paul Newman, at the end of the movie, who is the detective, says, fuck it, I'm just going to take the money. It's the first movie where people get away with a crime. Before that, you did not get away with crimes that way. In moviedom, didn't happen. If you were a villain and you were a bank robber, you got caught. You had to do the time. The second movie where that doesn't happen is The Getaway with Steve McQueen and Alan McGraw. It's another film that's a heist movie, and they wind up with the money at the end. And that tends to be a theme that's played out later in movies. Quentin Tarantino does this, and he's done it in a couple of movies. He wrote the script for True Romance. And at the end of the movie, Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette, they get away with the money. Albeit Christian Slater loses an eye, they get away with the money. In Natural Born Killers, Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis, they live. They get away. They get away. They're mass murderers, and they get away. Right? The monster is not put back into the box. But the one that really does it is Silence of the Lambs. In Silence of the Lambs, what happens to Hannibal Lecter? He gets away. He is a monster. And he becomes a hero. This is where we first see the sociopath as the hero. And who's the only person that has the ability to interact and interface with the sociopath? It's Clarice. It's a woman. It's not a man. It's a woman. So there's a very interesting link between this woman who is smart and agile, kind of bird-like. And she's very bird-like in that movie. And it's Hannibal Lecter who's in the cage. And her last name is Starling, right? Clarice Starling. So she's a bird, and she's outside the cage, and Hannibal Lecter's in the cage, which is kind of a switch, right? So it's this bird-like woman who's able to somehow have this. It's also kind of a weird take on the Beauty and the Beast, because he's a beast, right? He's definitely a beast, but he gets out. He leaves the theater. So now we're dealing. See, these things are actually important in a lot of ways. They're important. Because the image or the psychic image or the psychic energy of Hannibal Lecter being unleashed upon the public has manifested. And it's manifested in the recreation of Hannibal Lecter in the form of somebody like Dexter. There's a new series now where there's a father who's a serial killer who has a son who's a detective, and he employs his serial killer father to solve crimes. This is where we are now. It's absolutely, utterly insane and bizarre. So this is the rise of not just the anti-hero, that's long gone. This is the champion of the sociopath as the hero, which is part of the inversion. And that's where we are. And that's why theoretically despicable people are championed now in our society. You know, this brings us into sort of the discussion about the drag queen story hour, and how can it be that drag queens, transsexual drag queens, are now championed as heroes in our society? There's a reason why. Because we have venerated the sociopath. We've venerated the sociopath as somebody who has the utmost moral authority. Well, why? Because they have no morality. That's why. They've sacrificed their morality. They've slaughtered their morality. It's like the cremation of care. So as a result of that, they can do anything. And that gives them this kind of godlike status. Because we know that theoretically, God will remove a life, or God will bless thee, or God will damn thee. And so they've elevated the sociopath to godlike status because they have no morality. That's why. So now we have the tranny social hour, drag queen social hour, at our public libraries. A bunch of brain dead moron librarians who are letting them in. And my experience around librarians, when I was a kid, I've told this story before. I used to go to the public library in San Jose where I grew up. And I was really big into comic books. It was my thing. I knew everything about comic books. I knew about the birth of comic books. I knew about I was not your typical like comic book buying freaking, 12-year-old kid or 11-year-old kid. I think I was around 11 at that time. So we go to the library and I think it's 12, 11, 12. Anyway, go to the library and I'd bring my comic books. And then I had this one big book, which was on the history of comics. And I would read this book. And one time I was there with my father. We went to the library, me and my father and my mother. And there was this librarian there, and he sat down next to me. He started talking about me. He started talking about comics, and he's got a really great selection of comics at his house. And so I started asking questions about comics and the history of comics. He didn't know shit. So I knew this guy was just a fucking liar. And at that point, I'm like, this guy just wants me to get over his house, So my father came over, and after he says, "So what did that guy talk to you about?" I said, he was talking to me about comics, and he wanted me to come over to his place and look at his comics. What did you say to him? I said, I asked him some questions about comics, and I realized he's a liar, and then I realized what his motivation was. So it's not interested, right? And so he's a librarian, okay? I'm not saying this is all librarians, but that was my experience. That was my experience. So I've been reading about the whole, I had a bunch of stuff. I had a bunch of links I could take you into prepared, but I've been reading about how there's a strong connection now between sort of the drag queen story hour and this kind of, relationship with the Church of Satan. And that, hey, guess what? Drag queens are satanic. That they actually belong to like the Church of Satan. Gee, imagine that. And that their goal is to absolutely and utterly destroy the family and faith and Christianity and all these things that, we took all that stuff for granted. I took it for granted. I took family and this kind of, this organic nuclei, this loving nuclei, where we're supposed to be creating the next generation and nurturing and pretending or caring. And we were pretending that we weren't going to be assaulted or assailed, that this thing was, theoretically there and, sacred or whatever, right? That's not the case. And we're seeing now it's being, atomized and being cleaved. So anyway, it's under attack now, and the players are starting to emerge, and we're starting to see who they are. And it's very clear now that we're in a spiritual war. So the family piece is a big deal, and it's being just atomized on all these different levels. And even like with kids saying, well, I've been following Extinction Rebellion, and 12 years the planet's gonna going to die and I'm not going to have kids. There are 14, 15, 16-year-old kids out there who say, I don't want to have kids because it would be cruel to bring them into a planet that's going to die. They're taking vows. So that's happening. All right, let me get back to this Katie Hill person. Sorry, I went off on this tangent about Santa Clarita Diet, flesh eaters and sociopaths. Anyway, I do want to show you the visual for Katie Hill, though, if you haven't seen it. To me, it's hilarious. Sorry. Okay. Now, would you do a search for Katie Hill? All right. When you do a search for Katie Hill, you'll get Katie Hill, Democrat. Katie Hill, Democrat. And you'll see all these pictures where she looks incredibly normal, right? Normal. Oh, look, she's respectable. She's normal. Look at Katie Hill. She's a good representative. If you haven't seen the pictures, correct me, I'm sorry. Shocking photos of Congresswoman Katie Hill are revealed showing off Nazi-era tattoo while smoking a bong, kissing her female staffer, and posing nude on wife-sharing sites. There's Katie, good old Katie. Now, this is an Iron Cross. I don't know. Is that Nazi? Isn't that pre-Nazi, the Iron Cross? And the cross has been around a long time. This is like a version of the Tau Cross. Anyway, they're trying to say that she's a Nazi. I don't think she's a Nazi. That's a reach. That's a stretch. But she is a member of the Itty Bitty Kitty Club, apparently. Somebody asked, is she a dude? I don't know. Maybe. This little dude like there. But here she is, the naked bong effect. Look at that. You've got the skull and crossbones. Oh my God. So we got that, right? Nah, it just starts there. This is her staffer that she hired. So here is Katie Hill on the left, Morgan Desjardins, her staffer. And it's good to be close to your staff. Now, this is an offense that is basically, theoretically, you cannot have an affair with a staffer. That is not allowed in Washington, D.C. We know this happens all the time. Right, Mary Jo Kopechne, that was a staffer. It happens all the time. Not supposed to, though. And in some ways, if you get caught, well, you can be in really deep shit. And in some cases, people are even often murdered, like Mary Jo Kopechne. Now, here she is, given another little naked moment. Where's the bong? The bong should be right next to her on the table there. Have you seen the memes where with Joe Biden? The Joe Biden, that's like crazy. Some great Joe Biden memes. Anyway, there she is. There's Ms. Desjardins. Ooh, look at that look. Look at that look. Very interesting look. Now, this is her husband, who looks like Joe Rogan not on steroids, right? This is Joe Rogan not on steroids. How is this not Joe Rogan's lost brother? Now, here's Ms. Desjardins, and of course, here's Katie, Representative Hill. Oh, they're just one happy family. So they were poly. They're a poly trio, a polyphonic spree. There's the Iron Cross. It goes all the way back to World War I, by the way, not World War II. The Iron Cross, they used the Iron Cross in World War I. That was their symbol in World War I. Let's see, what else we have here. There they are together. Looks like it's pajama night. Pajama night at the Hill House. Pajama night. They're just having a fine old time. I bet you they're binge watching the Santa Clarita Diet on Netflix. And there's Joe Rogan's steroid-free brother with Katie Hill. He's the guy that spilled the beans. He's the whistleblower. And she's pissed, man. She's trying to sue the daily.co.uk for having these pictures up. There she is again, looking very like this is somebody I really want to represent me in my district. Fine representation of public service right there. There's Miss Desjardins again. Now this is the husband texting with Morgan Desjardins. Yeah, I get it. I'm pretty sure I played right into her game by acting how I did so that you would become her new supply. Her new supply? What does that mean? And I'm sorry. You still love her even after all this? I don't even love her anymore. I believe this is Megan Desjardins. And this is the husband. Yeah, I do. I don't want her. I won't ever go back with her, but yeah, I'm still in love with her. Rips my heart out every time I have to see her or have someone say something nice about her. These people are so fucked up and confused. So they're texting back and forth. And Jackie, I need me and Katie to be a secret for medical school. You have proper feelings for him? I just want him and I to be a secret because it's casual sex and it's no one's business. Honestly, I don't know. I'm still a mess over you. Here's more. I'm cool. I know you were freaking out a bit. Laugh out loud. I believe that's the husband, Haslip. Oh, there they are together. Walking the streets of their district. Little gay pride. Little stone wall. Little pizza slice. Sound like a pizza slice to you? What does she mean, new supply? I became her new supply. What is that? Oh, yes, and her nickname is Angel Butt. And apparently they have a goat. They have a goat. Let's just bring a little goat symbolism in here too, shall we? This is from a Reddit forum called Would You Fuck My Wife? And wife sharing. So Mr. No Steroid Joe Rogan is into watching. Oh, there's the pet goat. There is the pet goat. And there she is again with her staffer, her dapper staffer trying to get into medical school. Apparently this guy was involved too. A campaign finance director, Graham Kelly. According to text messages seen by dailymail.com, Hill's relation with Kelly was the final straw for Heslip. He said he could accept his wife having a relation with a woman, but not another man. So Mr. Kelly was supplying the sausage for the pigs in a blanket, and not Mr. Heslip. She's a Virgo. She's got like 4 planets in Virgo. She's got more Virgo than any other chart I've ever seen. Sun, moon, new moon Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Virgo. Shit, I think she's got Mars in Virgo too. They're all conjunct. Neptune sextile, all those planets. And then she has a Jupiter-Uranus trine. No water in her chart except for Pluto and Scorpio, which also sextiles those Virgo planets. Yes. So there's no water and no air. There's no objectivity. She has no objectivity. She's definitely into tapping all that Virgo with all that Neptune and all that Pluto. Amazing, right? Totally amazing. This is weird. Look at this shit. What is this about? These two deserve each other. They need to be together. This is about as Friday FARcasty as you get right here. Look at that. They're like aliens, right? Oh my God. This is crazy. Katie Hill going to sue DM for these pictures. Has that been mentioned already? Good luck. Good luck. This is amazing. Does she know Keith Vaseline? Oh, look at this. Trump had his old friend Putin dig up more dirt again. That's bullshit. It was the husband. The husband dug this stuff up. You got replaced. You got replaced first of all by Desjardins, and then once Mr. Kelly got involved, he got pissed. He was replaced. And somebody on my Facebook page, or the 11th House page, said, well, at least they're adults. Okay? I could co-sign on that. They're adults. She's an adult having an experience with another consenting adult. That's fine. And I'm sure in terms of recreational activities, I'm sure that there are other congressional representatives and senators who indulge or have indulged with far worse, much, much worse. So I guess we can make kind of an adjustment there to some extent. Here's the problem. Number one, it's against the rules. Number two, it has just made her a completely ineffective person as far as being a representative goes. Now, her district may embrace her with open arms and, oh, we love you, Katie, we love you, we don't care, we don't care. But that shit is blackmailable. It's blackmailable. It's blackmailable. In the way that the internet is set up now, the way anybody can get into your computer and snatch your shit or stick stuff on your computer or do a deep fake, it's compromising, really compromising. That's where it's an issue. That's compromising. Look, if you want to go off and work in the private sector, if you want to work for some pharmaceutical company and have three-ways and all that stuff, that's fine. That's, it's your life. You're an adult. You can make those choices and you can do that. When you work in the public sector and the public service, and you have to answer to a group of people who elected you, who pay taxes in your district, where you can be compromised, that does not work well. This doesn't work well. There's a higher level. People say that, oh, well, I'm here to serve, right? Like being a public servant is in some ways a real grind. In some capacities it can be. It can be a very thankless job for working very long hours, but there are public servants that really benefit and get a lot of perks out of being a public servant. Power is one of them. And Miss Katie Hill certainly tapped into her power spot, right? So that's not really being a public servant. That's using public service to be a self-servant or self-servant. To really do it, you've got to get into the idea of Capricorn, which happens to be like austere and kind of denying certain things. That's how Capricorn works. Instead, what's happened is the system's been gained, and people who are elected officials have used it for a very, very long time. That's also, by the way, South Node, Capricorn, North Node, Cancer moment time. Right, the South Node makes it very vulnerable, incredibly vulnerable. In terms of public officials and government, and then that True Node in Cancer, well, that's have to do with a couple of women, but somebody wasn't being reciprocated. And I think it was Joe Rogan's non-steroidal brother. All right, I think that's really about it for today. I got to jump into the clean water Fred mode, and I got a lot of work to do with just my own work with my website and readings and all the stuff that I do to actually make some money. So let me check in with you guys in the chat room, and let's see where we are. Let's see, Virgo's libido's like rabbits. It's an earth sign. Let's not, even Capricorn people are very lusty, earthy people, right? Okay, let me see what we got in the, I gotta read your comments. I gotta go back a ways. Let's see. I'm a dog trainer, dude. Hit me up for advice. Need tons of skill to deal with a cat, a whole leopard dog. Let's see. Yes. What else do we have here? You dodged a bullet. I know, right? I totally dodged a bullet on that dog. Hi from Dave and Marie. On a way. Hey, you're on your way back. Big ups to the Olmsteads. Let's see. False Flag Friday. Could be. Could be. Holy Damagard. He's worth checking out. And watching fire is very sad. Yeah, there are fires going on now in California. I was going to talk about that. I apologize, didn't get there. Mike Morales reported explosion in California right before fire started. Uses NVAA, NOAA, etc. charts. Good. Yep, that's happening. Amazing Polly is a great new expert on social thought and experiment. Good, good, good. There's Scoobs. Hey, what's going on? So Astrofly watched the interview with Henrik and E. Michael Jones. Yep. What is gnocchi? Gnocchi. Gnocchi. It is ravioli, but like potato. Yes. Basically, baby. Yes. Very baby food, comforting in some ways. Kind of things you give a toddler. She has a pantheon of mental issues. OCD is part of a cluster of 8 personality disorders. Yep. There's Heather. Lots of people with Asperger's have obsessive narrow focus anxiety. Ruled signs like people with anorexia. Well, she's got sun, moon, not new moon, but sun, moon, Neptune, right? I believe in Capricorn, right? Is that right? No, sun. She's sun in Capricorn, moon in Capricorn, and what else? Oh, she's got the true node in Capricorn as well. Let's see. What else we have here? Court system is a total fraud. There'll be no recourse to the courts. Such victories are non sequitur. They're built around abandoning you and your sovereignty. No, I'm telling you, Laura was able to get her money back at the very least. She had to do it. She had to do it. You're making a case for veganism. Judy Anderson, be for a child away. It's hard to get anything done with a lap cat. Think about the cellular memory from meat factory farming. Yep, Dexter was pure preconditioning. Yep, I always hated zombie stuff. Never could stand Dexter either. Yeah, bad news. Once the legal system, you will escape without, you will not escape. I would agree with you, Uncle Glenn. I would totally agree with you, 100%. Knowing this firsthand. Many people are spiritually gone. You can see this by psychic viewing. That's from Masaki. It looks like you're back. Welcome back. In the show Hannibal, he plays all over the world with a detective in tow. Yes. Well, that's right. There is a Hannibal now, TV series, isn't there? I forgot about that. Worker Man, also only the hero dies. Correct. Even Star Wars, since bought out by Disney, is championing the dark side and making Luke out to be a crazy old man. That's true. Yes. And let's see. Good thing everything is coming out in the open. 2020 will be a peak. I agree with that. Hi, Ani. Good to see you. There's Jeff. What's going on, Jeff? Maybe a fan of West Coast choppers. Tiffany Fitzhenry was suspended from Twitter yesterday for talking about Katie Hill. I think they've been waiting to suspend Tiffany for a while now. That's what I think. And they use this as an opportunity to do that. Congrats, Robert. You got a thumbs down, if that's a badge of honor, in my opinion. If you're a Democrat, he is she. Looks like a he, doesn't he? Yeah. Maybe she's a Templar. It goes back to the Templar. Narcissistic supply. Religious, that is complicated. That's funny. That's very, very funny. Did the ex forget to include embarrassing naked pics of himself, his next girlfriend? The ex is a simp. He's a total simp. Of course, they have a goat. Scapegoat, yes. Because the leak is not by accident. It's part of the evolving of society. Interesting. They'd like to rub it in our faces. They'd like to rub it in our faces. Yes. It's true. Pod people from Masaki. Is that Satan at his finest? Virgo's libido's like rabbit. I think we're close to being caught up here, right? These people are weird, very weird, totally weird. Anyone who is older than a teen senses something is very wrong with this planet. Yes, you have to have context, total context. Against the Grain YouTube chain has some great Sonoma explosion footage today. But keep your eyes on that. The fires are definitely happening. Keep your eyes on that. The fires are definitely happening. I wanted to talk about them. It seems like we're in another cycle of this with the blackouts and the rollouts. And, you know, there seems to be now kind of this systematic and very strategic rolling out that's going on right now. And the depopulation of California, the relocation of people from California. So, you know, this is an evolving situation. It's an evolving story. So keep your eyes on it. There are people out there, look in the chat room, who are focused on this and who are looking at how it's all unfolding right now. And I think it's going to have some resonance over the weekend. Feels like the weekend's a little wild. Certainly the weather here is wild. All right, let me go one more quick cruise into the chat room. Let's see. Instagram, I watch too. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for jumping in here today with me. And we have one person that doesn't like it. I just like my own show today. If you like it, hit the thumbs up button. Best, smartest, most informed chat room on the internet. I don't care what anybody else says. This chat room is absolutely genius, lights out, high wattage, high brain power, high beams, big hearts. You guys are the best. You're the best. And I was able to see a lot of you in person, and it confirmed my theories and opinions and feelings about all of you. You're the best. And when you get a bunch of people together, and this is what that weekend showed me, when you get a bunch of people together who are switched on, who are courageous, who are able to navigate and untangle things, who are living with the spirit of truth and love and God in their heart, and I believe that you are. You know, however you translated this in your own work, in your own life, it was like love in action. It was like love and service in action. And I shared this with the group in our final night there, in that everybody was incredibly unique. I mean, it was like some of the biggest personalities I've ever seen assembled together. There were not like wallflowers there. These were big personalities, big people. And guess what? We all cared about each other. We were all in service to this experience and this thing that we were creating. And this is, to me, was always sort of the model of the Aquarian age, where everybody kind of knows who they are. Like, there's no cognitive dissonance, right? You know who you are, you know what you can do. You know, you're learning more, and you admit that you don't know what you don't know, which is a really humbling thing. And guess what? There are people there to fill in the blanks and to help and to be a part of it. And they know the same things, right? They know who they are, but it's not to the point where it is ego dominated, where everybody is like on, and everybody's on in a different kind of way, but at the same level, and we're all supporting each other. It doesn't mean it's perfect. You know, shit comes up and we're human, right? But to me, that was the model of the world that I want to live in. And each and every one of you were a part of that. And I would assume it's a model of the world that you want to live in too. It's possible. That weekend showed me it was possible. And yes, it was, you know, people got to step away from their lives. They have to work and do all the other shit, right? But this is what happens. It's kind of like a road test in a laboratory, a temporary autonomous zone where things are potential. And even if we hit 70% of that potential in a setting that would reflect that, we'd be much better off than where we are in many other cases. So And, you know, I just want to address the court stuff. I'm with Christine. And I think the courts are, by and large, a waste of time. Guess what? Some people do win in the courts. Most of the people that figure out how to apply their sovereign status inside the courtroom situation, although the courts are cracking down on that now too. But in terms of that guy, right, that guy, you know, that's about his only recourse at this point. And I think that would be the way for, at the very least, you know, for his ex-wife to spend a lot of money and have to get engaged and bleed cash, because that's another part of the strategy as well. It may not be a winning one, but it's a one that I think could, at the very least, you know, lessen her resources. Trust me, I know this from personal experience. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you for being a part of today's show. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to save what's possible. I'll be back on Sunday night. We'll get into some more astrology. I'm sure we'll have something to talk about. Remember, we're coming up on this Mars-Pluto square, and I think it's quite explosive. So just keep an eye on it. And even in your own life, you know, pick your battles. Pick your battles wisely. I'm Robert Phoenix. Find me at robertphoenix.com. If you want to get a reading, I'm over on Facebook. We love the 11th House Astro page. And have yourself a very, very great weekend indeed.